All right.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
Put the speaker in the mic. Good evening. Check out.
They're gonna come on weekends.
I think so right now. Good sign. You don't like that? Yeah.
Following them on Facebook. Keep watching.
Yes.
I took you off. I think, for a second.
Okay, perfect, yeah.
All right, while we work on our technical work here, we'll do some introductions and things. My name's Mark Waltz, I'm the Assistant Town Manager. And at our far left is Jane DuBoard with the Mid-Coast Council of Governments, and Adi Filson, also with the Mid-Coast Council of Governments. To my right is Dennis Cox, our Public Works Director, and then Julie Erdman, our Planning Director. So what we're here tonight, maybe you heard a few people say, anxious to hear what you're gonna do on what property. That's not why we're here tonight. What we're here tonight is because we want to collect information from you that's going to help us hopefully find some grants, which is what the Mid-Coast Council of Governments is going to help us with, to help fund what the work that needs to be done. I'm not an engineer and I'll play one on TV, but based on kind of our layman's look at things, and Dennis is more than layman look, there's probably going to be different solutions in different places. Like the first part of the road that where the water will come over it, maybe the road's gonna have to be raised. Maybe something's gonna have to be done with that culvert where the water goes both ways under it or on the corner. Further down the road where it's coming close to eroding underneath the road, maybe a different solution. There's a lot of, and you'll hear more about this once we get into the PowerPoint and from Adi and Dan, but there's a lot of push to make things more environmentally friendly as far as the solutions, less rock, more nature-based things. So that might be something we can more likely get funding for and things. So this is the first step in that process. We're tonight gonna give you kind of our understanding of what we think the problem is. And we want to hear from you guys what you think the problem is. If we missed something, are there areas? We're also wanting to hear things like uses that you have on your properties, and they'll explain a little more later why that matters. And then finally, we're going to talk about, we might be looking for easements from people to help do some of the work that needs to be done. So we'll be inquiring into that. So we'll come to all those things in a few minutes. So I think we're ready to try the show again. All right.
I think so.
Get
I think
into
we solved
slides.
it. Let's see.
I will promote you to a panelist. And anyone that is watching us online, once we start taking comments, people can comment from online as well as in the room, and we'll give people, if they raise their hands, to be a chance to be promoted to a panelist. Neither one of you is Katie though, right?
No.
It says meeting host will let you in, stay on.
Okay. Oh, there we go. I put you on hold, I guess.
Let's see if my speakers are gonna go rogue again. Cool.
It's like it is working good.
Perfect, okay.
Kind of on our cover slide here is a picture we took back in, I think it was the beginning of May, when there was the storm and the water ended up being quite high and the road, obviously in that situation, got partially flooded. And next slide, please. So here's the things that we're aware of, and Dennis may elaborate on some of this. But we're aware that there can be flooding of the road with high tides in conjunction with the significant storms. We're also aware in the past, Dennis has been aware there's places where the water actually, the culverts get full on the inland side of the road and then would wash across the road, which Dennis has done a lot of work on in the past 5 years or so to try to keep that from happening by making the culverts bigger and things. And then the other area we noticed that we thought was the most serious area is in the picture on the right, which is kind of small for you to see there, but the bank is eroding and it's getting relatively close to the road. It's probably a foot or two away from it at this point. And if obviously it went further, could end up undermining the road. Next slide. So some of the work that the Public Works Department has done to try to help things is they've been worked on the ditching. And roughly since 2015, this isn't necessary chronological order, but they've made the ditches digger, tried to make the water flow better through them. They've done some work on the swales to get the water directed to the culverts, done some culvert replacements in places. That one that is just past the curve where the water goes both ways, they enlarged that and replaced that culvert. They've also put rock on the river side of the culverts to try to keep the culverts intact better, and maybe rock on the other two, or rock on both sides. The road's been paved. That's more routine maintenance rather than, you know, things that particularly address storm damage. Next slide, please. And then the most significant thing was about 200 feet of riprap were added to the road in an area to try to keep it protected from erosion. Next slide. And so one of the things that, as we started to look at this and do some research, you see this big pile of books that's on the right-hand side of that. It's about 3 feet thick when those notebooks are all put together. And those are we call them the road books. So they've got records on each road in town. They've got, some of them have survey plans. We know exactly where the road is. Others have town meeting records from 1832, when the road was first accepted. Guess how much is in there on Pleasant Point Road? Nothing. The road is so old that it was pretty much predates any of the town's records. One of our tasks we're probably gonna have to do is go read every set of town meeting minutes we have since the beginning of the town and see if we can find where the road's discussed. Which is, it's not so bad in the typed ones, but once you get into the handwritten ones, it takes a while. But this road has been in existence probably since about the time the town wasn't. So if you look at some of the real old maps of Topsham, one of the few roads that shows on there is this road. Reason why we bring that up is some of you may have had your property surveyed and it wasn't recorded. We've looked at the recorded surveys in the registry of deeds, and none of them really have any detailed information or don't have detailed information on the road. Most say they assumed it's in a particular place. Why that matters is on the other picture on this slide is one of our tax maps, and you see those little red hooks that are right around the road on both sides. That means that in that area, at least our assessor thinks the person that has the inland lot also owns the water side. So because they own property on both sides of the road, we don't have any ability to do something without their permission. So that's one of the things we're going to cover later is who would be willing to let us work on the river side of their road. And maybe some of the solutions would involve the inland side of the road too, but for the shore of the river. Next slide, please. So I heard someone talk about, I guess, John Baxter as they're coming into the meeting. Probably the best survey on record was the one where John Baxter laid out the lots back in 1963. And we blew up a little portion of John Baxter's plan on the right there, and that's again the area where people own lots on both sides of the road according to the assessors. So those are the areas in particular that we may be looking or asking for some easement rights to try to implement whatever solution the engineers and things come up with. So at this point, we can go to the next slide and turn it over to Adi and Dan.
Sure, let's see, just gonna move this out of the way so I can see a little better. Awesome, yeah, so I guess it might be a little hard for you to see here, but this is sort of the project area. What's that? Can you hear me?
you.
Okay, I'll speak up a little louder. Is the microphone working?
Yeah, you can bring it a little closer, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So this might be a little hard for you to see, but this is roughly the project area that we have in mind. In red there is where we've heard that there's flooding. And then between the blue bars, which I'm guessing might be a little harder for you to see, that's sort of the whole scope of the project. Above that red circular areas where we've seen evidence of the road erosion out from underneath of it. There we go. So as Mark mentioned, Dan and I are here from Mid-Coast Council of Governments. We're a regional planning organization, and so we help with regional coordination. And for the purposes of this project, we're really here to assist with looking for grant funding and other types of funding sources to support this project. Another thing we wanted to talk with you about tonight is about different design concepts. So we're not here to present any, as Mark was talking about, we're not engineers, we're not here to present any sort of specific designs or elements of what's going to be incorporated, but we want to talk about, some possibilities of things that we're considering, and also to gather information from you. Your experiences and who you are can really actually help the town in getting funding for this type of project. But we want to give you an idea of what the timeline might be overall. So this is a draft timeline, so don't hold us to it. This is just our best guesses. It's, it can be a little hard to predict, but I think by the end or by mid-January, we're hoping to have an RFP that's out, a request for proposal that's out for the preliminary engineering study. So that will go out to bid, there'll be a contract selection, and then the preliminary engineering study will be conducted. Hopefully by mid-July or the end of July, depending. And then from there, there'll be a design and engineering phase. And from there, we get to the implementation side of things. So we're still a little ways out with this project, but these are sort of the necessary steps in order to ensure that, whatever is implemented is going to meet your needs and meet the town's needs. So one of our goals is to ensure community engagement throughout this whole process. So making sure that, like in this meeting, that we're hearing you, and that you have opportunities to see what's coming out of this design and engineering process. So these are our, on screen I have our project goals. I'll read them out in case you can't see them. So ensure safe and unimpeded access to residences, resilience, including nature-based solutions where applicable, reducing negative environmental impact, minimizing taxpayer burden through external funding, community input and satisfaction. So this is sort of our brainstorm of project goals. we have a survey. I know everybody loves surveys. But, you know, please feel free if you feel like there are other goals that should be included or different goals that should be included. Please feel free to incorporate, those comments into the survey as you're filling those out. So in that last slide, I talked about resilience. How many people here are familiar with the term resilience as it would relate to this project? Raise your hand. Well, a few people, yeah. Resilience is a term that's thrown around a lot in the planning world. So I'll give you a definition. So we think of resilience as the ability to prepare for, adapt to, and recover from hazardous environmental or weather events. So in this case, we want to make sure that whatever solution that is implemented is something that adapts to changing conditions. You don't want to just, you know, throw a whole bunch of concrete at a project and hope for the best. But one way that we consider resilience is through what we call nature-based solutions. And Mark, I'm actually going to come back to your slide after I define nature-based solutions. Raise your hand if you've heard of nature-based solutions before. Okay, a few people, cool, yeah. So here I have an example of a nature-based solution, and this is actually a hybrid solution. I'll talk about that in a minute. But nature-based solutions are those that incorporate natural processes or elements to promote resilience and sustainability. So, you know, a really common example of a nature-based solution. Are you familiar with parking lot heat islands, the heat island effect caused by parking lots? So you know how hot parking lots get. Well, if you've seen, you know, just a parking lot with nothing in sight but cars, as opposed to a parking lot that have those little tree banks in them, those trees help with the heat island effect. They also provide shade for your cars, those trees, and making sure that those plantings are incorporated into a parking lot is a nature-based solution. So that's one of the most common ones that you'll see. In terms of this project, we're hoping that, you know, nature-based solutions might have they may have a potential to be used in this project to actually do better than what we call, you know, gray solutions. So another thing that these are called are green or gray projects. Or gray, you think of concrete; green, you think of nature solutions. So so there's the real possibility with this type of project, especially with coastal erosion projects, where nature-based solutions may actually be more effective in the long term than gray infrastructure projects. So I'm going to go back to your slide.
So one thing we noticed as we're going down the road, trying to look at the different problems, is we saw that in these areas where the natural vegetation is being cut, the roots from the natural vegetation is something that contributes to helping protect the shoreline. So to the extent we kill off what's there, it's going to make it that more likely that the road's going to, the area next is going to erode.
The vegetation is not killed off there. It's growing pretty hardy, and we just keep it back from overflowing over the road. And the poison ivy and poison oak is very heavy in that area, so we keep the vegetation down so we can enjoy what's going on there.
Yeah, and presumably it is to keep the view.
But if you go down there, like you took, this picture is taken in the fall, obviously.
I think so.
Yeah, so if you go down in the summertime, it's totally thriving down there. So.
And we blacked out the person's house because I'm not trying to pick on anyone, but there were a number of places down the road where we saw stuff cut though. So I guess the point is, if the engineers end up saying the best solution is some type of a green one, we're going to be working against it if it gets cut down, whatever we put in. So we're just
Also
asking.
been a
for
lot of
work to be done.
storms down there where trees have fallen, that they had to be cut, and a lot of brown tail infestation in those trees. A lot of them.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about trees that have fallen down, it's stuff that is gonna help hold the banking in place.
There is a very strong flow through there too, because you have there's a little rock there. There's a very strong flow when the tide goes in and out right through that area.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and that's exactly the type of information we're looking for, so. No, we're not looking to blame anyone here, it's not like, you know, this is the cause of the problem, it's, you know, obviously been a considerable number of major storm events. Some types of vegetation, not all vegetation, can help prevent or slow erosion. I'm not saying that this is the, you know, the correct answer for this, the correct solution. I think the engineers will tell us that, and it may be that, you know, it's a different type of vegetation, and you're exactly right. There are some types of vegetation that aren't gonna contribute to that at all. There's some types that have, their roots really hold, in the ground a lot better and hold back that erosion. But yeah, a lot of the current vegetation along there isn't necessarily contributing to the preserving the embankment.
You're seeing the roots because when the tides get high and that water starts ripping through there, that's what's causing the erosion. The tide coming in, going out, and add to a storm and
In the
Yes.
falls, the
it
dam.
gets higher. That's why you're seeing the roots, because it's eroding, it's taking all of the.
as you go further down the road and you have a higher elevation of the road, like, do you have any pictures of the road further down from the higher elevation to the shoreline?
Yeah.
Where the road's down there?
And why don't we, only because the recording's not gonna catch it if we're going back and forth.
Because it seems like it's just the easiest picture to take, you know.
So what we'll do is we'll finish the PowerPoint and then we'll let people use the microphone. That way we'll get it in recording, because otherwise we won't get your comments preserved. Just for the whole report.
Yeah, this is not an example of like people doing bad things or anything. We're not trying to get anyone in trouble. It's nothing along those lines. We fully understand that this is no one's fault. It's just you know, environmental impacts. We're mostly here just to hear and learn from you, so. So yeah, this diagram here shows sort of a combination of gray and green solutions with this, my cursor, oh, you can kind of see it down here. So this like gray little hump here is a sill, and that helps, in this instance, protect, from the wave action. And then they planted a marsh, that, you know, nature-based solutions are trying to use what's native, what would actually be growing there, and then incorporate that with a planted buffer. So this is just an example. I'm not saying that this is what is going to happen. It may very well be that the engineers feel that this isn't a solution that's going to work for this project. We just wanted to introduce the concept to you, especially because a lot of the federal and state funding opportunities to fund this project, the implementation of it at least, really are emphasizing nature-based solutions. And so it's something that we want to think about, you know, is this an option? You know, if it works for the project and is an option that everyone is on board with, then it could have potential, you know, it could potentially reduce the cost to taxpayers. So just something we're thinking about. I'm trying to just have a quote. This is from the Federal Highway Administration's handbook. While several nature-based solutions have the ability to innately adapt to rising sea levels, traditional strategies to protect coastal infrastructure that rely on hardening shorelines and other gray solutions may not be adaptable or may be specifically designed to do so, which can be costly. These solutions can also have unintended consequences, such as increased erosion or deposition along other parts of the coastline. So I guess this is really small for you to see, so I'm sorry about that, but this is, I believe we'll probably have these slides posted online. Is that a possibility? So this is a matrix that I took out of the Federal Highway Administration. There we go. Sorry, evening time is a little rough tonight. So they have a handbook on nature-based solutions for coastal highway resilience. And so this is a matrix kind of going over what the issue is, what the specific application is, what is a nature-based solution, what's a structural solution, and what's a hybrid of both. One, a gray solution might work better, a hybrid solution might work best. We're hoping that the engineers will evaluate all of the above.
And it may be different things for different parts of the road.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, as I mentioned, we really want to hear from you. What you say will really help us build a case for funding this project and getting traction for this project. So, how do we feel about breaking up into discussion groups?
Actually, I'd almost rather keep it.
Oh, for the recording. Okay, perfect. Yeah, awesome. So I just wanted to go over a couple of questions with you all, so we can get some answers. And yeah, as Mark said, it's this microphone up here. If you want to contribute, if you could speak into the microphone, so we can have that for record, if you don't mind. So I know the town has collected some information in terms of what people have been experiencing, but we want to make sure that we hear from as many people as possible. So our first question is, what are your concerns, if any, about the roadway?
My concern is you started off with the riprap, the big rocks, and you stopped. You didn't continue all the way down into the corner where you can see those roots. I think what you started was great because the soot and the ground, the leaves will start mulching into those rocks and be contained. But with nothing there, where you stop, the water just comes and just keeps on flushing and flushing, and pretty soon it's just gonna keep going under the road. And that's why you're seeing the roots, because it's not holding the dirt, it's not holding the soil. So my question is, why did you stop? Why didn't you continue?
Because of the laws and the rules dealing with the coastal flooding, coastal waters.
Well, why did you stop?
Why did we start? Because we had an immediate problem. And we had to work with the environmental protection folks, Army Corps and Inland Fish and Wildlife in regards to the shoreline protection. So we got their blessing to do about up to 200 feet of shoreline. So we did about 180 feet at that point. That's all we could do because it was an emergency repair work. It wasn't a permit process that we went through to do that work.
Years ago, we had FEMA come down there. This was before you took over.
Yeah.
And they put a few rocks right there in front of the house.
Yeah.
And that was the end. And then since then, all it does is keep on washing away.
And we recognize that, and that's why we're here tonight. We want
Well,
to
I think
continue.
if you can continue to finish doing what you started, I think that's gonna be the answer. And
They won't let, at this point, they won't let us.
Okay.
The environmental, the rules and the regulations have my hands tied to continue what we've done.
Okay.
We've done what we can until we go through the permit process now, okay? And with that permit process, we've got to show them what our intentions are. And they're sharing with us, one solution isn't gonna solve all the problems. So that's why we're working with you folks, and we're here. It's not just the cutting the vegetation that's causing us the problem.
Good evening, Peter McCarthy, Forside Road. The Hill of Pleasant Point and the corner everyone's looking at on the property owner. That big piece with number 27 on the map, that's me. So I guess I'll have some voice in what's happening. I've got 50+ years of experience. I would like to address in the past 2 years, a little bit has been discussed about what Dennis has done with his crew. And the most phenomenal piece of water flow he has addressed by raising the roadbed, also putting in a bigger culvert. Now, what that translates to, when I looked around this room, there's some stakeholders who are not here. Because if the other stakeholders were here, the room would be overflowing. Well, who are they? They're the residents of Forsyth Road that run from the top of the hill where the big oak tree is to Muddy River Bridge. Because anything you do to my culvert or the curve down there has a profound effect on every cellar, house, and driveway down the Forsyth Road. And what Dennis did in raising that up, the most phenomenal thing he did was he put in a bigger pipe. What did that do? It allowed the water at high tide to flow at a much greater rate. Much greater. It used to take hours for that tide to reach through, and because it was so slow, the diameter of the pipe was so small, it flooded the road. These past 2 years, that picture that you showed on the corner is nothing. When it takes a 2-ton truck to go back and forth, you know you got water in the road. And one of the things that has happened as a result of that, the water flow is much, much, much better. The time change of it, the Bath tidal effect, the Androscoggin River effect. We have a very good ally in Brookfield in terms of monitoring water flow at the highest time with the water coming over the dam. They're cutting that down. It's reducing the flow. My particular piece of property that runs parallel to Forsyth Road is like the water level you find in high school physics. Eventually, there's a leveling out and there's no greater pressure in the river. On the Androscoggin side, there's no greater pressure on the Muddy River side. The difference is that most of you people don't know about, there's a thing called Randall Creek or Thorn Creek. And Thorn Creek runs under Forsyth Road, just below my property. And that is the equilibrium. That's the hose where the water goes through to equal. And it takes 4, 5, and 6 hours to come up, and then it has to drain back down, dependent upon the tides. So any alteration that you make, which may in a way impact just that corner, you've got the rest of the Forsyth Road that you need to be looking at. And if you don't look at it, you're gonna have a problem with digging my corner. Okay? Because it impacts me. There's one more point. For years, we have had a problem on Pleasant Point Hill, icy, nasty, continually putting salt down through several road commissioners. Dennis came and he listened. That was wonderful. Because they started digging lower in the hill. And I said, you know, there's water coming out of higher. Show me. And we went out and we dug out, and there's a well in the side of the hill. And there's a pipe that comes out. And back in the days when Pleasant Point Road was all dirt, people got their water there. People on down the side with that wells got their water from the Eldred well. Above it is a windmill, higher up yet. They were going to dig there, and I said, oh, please, let's go up higher and dig higher. And we did. And the dam broke. All the water that's running 724 right through the middle of the coldest days of winter was coming out from that well on the top down through. It had etched down under the road. There's ledge under the road. So the water came up to the surface. One more point and I'll get out of here. I've got a lot to say, but I'm tempering it because I've got a lot of friends here. And I'm doing my best not to use any nasty words because it's a friendly meeting. But anyways, one of the things that Dennis's efforts have done to the road, there's less flow of water because the up behind Pleasant Point Road to Forsyth, there is a swamp and there is about a 60-foot drop off in some places off the back of my property, pure ledge. It is a remarkable dump down into there. That water fills and flows through there and whatnot. And since that road has been improved, I've got to say the work on the Baxter demonstration forest. 50 years I could never walk through there. Now I walk through regularly. They had trucks in there, right back in there. It's a marvelous thing. It's pretty pristine. It's not a Margaret Carson type preserve, but it's a demonstration forest, very well done. As a result of that, more and more water was flowing out of there down onto the Forsyth Road. His crews came in, there must be 5 or 6 new culverts in there, big dams, and the water is returning back into the bay on an alternate source. The positive side of it is we are not having that water on the road. The most important part of it, including Pleasant Point Hill, we are using less salt. Salt is the enemy of the bay, and he is using so much less. So that's the last of my big boy, good boy act. Thank you, people.
Peter? Anyone else want to comment? Things they've observed, ideas, suggestions, comments?
Joe Trafton, 258 Pleasant Point. My wife and I own a piece on the opposite side of the road, the one picture showed more clearly than Peter's land. One piece of information that I think might be helpful is something I remember happening in the big flood, what we call the 1,000-year flood, I think it was. I'm not sure that that's going to be accurate in the future. I think we'll see many more of those. But the water that came around Pleasant Point wasn't coming down the Androscoggin, it wasn't coming up the river, it was coming down the Kennebec. And if the flow in the Kennebec and the flow in the Androscoggin are different, the water flow in is going to be lower on one side or higher on the other. And I remember when the water coming down the Kennebec was much higher than the Androscoggin. And so the road was being flooded from the land side, not the bay side. Pleasant Point Road is like a dike. And the water can come one way, but the water can come the other. If you took 1.5 feet off the road and lowered it, you notice that Pleasant Point's an island. And it really is an island at high tide. The water from the Muddy River side to the bay side, it's the same. It flows back and forth. Raising the road might work for a short period of time. But if we think that the climate change is going to really matter and the water is going to keep rising, it's only going to be a temporary solution. And like a dike, if enough water comes, it's going to wash it out no matter what we do and what's done. The town of Topsham has done a marvelous job with the Pleasant Point Road. I remember when, like what Peter just said, it was dirt. And then it went down, I think it was maybe 0.3 of a mile down to before the camps really started. And then it went further, and now it's down to the edge of my driveway, the whole of Pleasant Point. It's plowed well in the wintertime. The town has done a marvelous job of maintaining it. The idea, though, that we're going to be able to keep Pleasant Point Road the way it is only a temporary thing. I think at some point, we're going to have to accept that we can go back and forth at low tide, but maybe at high tide, we're going to have to stay home and just wait it out. And we have seen it that way. I can think of 2 people who lost their cars in that dip. Tried to drive through it when the water was too high and didn't make it. And we'll see that again. Thank you.
And if you're online and you'd like to comment, feel free to raise your figurative hand and we will promote you to speak. Anyone else in the room like to make a comment? Observation, are there things we've missed that you think are problems with the road? Are there other things you think we need? These are interesting points about the water from the Kennebec and the water level on Forsyth Road being affected, and there are other things.
Mike Emery, Pleasant Point Road. There is, I believe heading up into Rangeley, there's a plaque up there, the height of the land, where it states that over 44 billion gallons of water flow into the Androscoggin each day. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I did read that one somewhere.
All right, thank you.
Natalie Cather. And that guy. I just have a question, and this is something I probably should have looked at, but you guys probably have. Projective of what's gonna happen to the bay in the next 50 years. Is there some water tables, projections showing rise in the bay, how much water is gonna get higher, and, you know, basing what your decisions are, I imagine that would be important. And I don't know if anyone's done those projections or looking
I
at.
think that's part of what we would expect the engineers to do, is they try to come up with ideas, so.
Great.
NOAA has some climate change maps that look at sea level rise. And it doesn't necessarily predict, you know, how fast things are, you know, water levels might rise. But what it does show is that with, I think it's 3.2 feet of water rise, that the corner would be underwater where that flooding is happening. So that's definitely something that will be taken into consideration and something that the engineers would be looking into further. And that's really why we're talking about resilience. We're not just planning for what the conditions are now, but what the conditions would be in the future as well.
And there's an interactive map that you can use, it's Maine's Department of Agriculture and Conservation and Forestry. There's a Maine Geological Survey map on their website that has sea level rise and storm surge scenarios, so you can go into that, you can type in Pleasant Point Road as the address, and you can play around with the layers they have. You know, what does the highest astronomical tide look like with 1.2 feet? What does it look like with 3.9 feet of sea level rise? And you can kind of see how it advances with, you know, based on different sea level rise scenarios. It's pretty, I think it's a pretty easy mapping system to kind of play around in.
Yeah, it really does look like an island when you look at that, you know, 3 point whatever amount of rise. So just out of curiosity, how many people here are, you raise your hand if you're a part-time or seasonal resident on Pleasant Point Road?
What'd you say?
A part-time or seasonal resident?
Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Awesome, thank you. Another thing, I think we're interested in is, you know, what would you like to see come out of this project, and what would you like to see from the process overall? So also, you know, if you have any comments on that.
I'll make a comment.
Yeah.
I'm Judy Carpenter. I'm at 135 Pleasant Point Road, originally known as Camp Cozy. We've been 5 generations at this location, so it's not seasonal for me, it's full-time. And I'm sure the rest of the members of the family would say the same. One member spoke about to me that the end of Pleasant Point is an island, all right? Put a causeway in. Are we talking just about the section of road where you can come down off the hill by the big tree? And that the low section, or is it further down? They're having problems too? We're about in the middle. 135 is in the middle, and we're in a cove. Our banking's eroding because of the storm that killed all the trees and blew them down. You had mentioned that the government won't allow put any rocks in to keep the banking, save the banking. My concern is if you widen the road or raise the road, it will make it impede us or access to our property. And of course, everybody's got new driveways with a macadam, and it's not percolating. The soil's not percolating anymore, and, things change. So we have to change the way we access our property now. I would like to bring that forward, and also, well, if there's any kind of a widening, is going to affect our well, and we can't have that. And, it would take away our property. My other concern is, those are two biggest concerns, is widening of the road and raising the road. Now, if you raise it down there, Amy, are you gonna go all the way down with it? And, I came here with the idea that we were gonna have some kind of presentation that shows the intent of, this is my Italian in me talking, the intent of what the road was gonna be like. And I'm not getting that. You're more or less
You're right. You're
listening for
Yeah.
complaints, so to speak. By the way, was this brought forward by the residents of Pleasant Point Road? And why is this coming up now?
So it's a combination of things. Part of it is we've had residents say they're concerned that the road may, well, let's take that area where it's eroding real close to the road. They're worried that they can't get to their houses because the road may wash out. Part of it is also observations of the Public Works Department through the years, and town, we see that, we're worried about that part of the road. To elaborate a little more about the rock, that was suggested, that one area where probably it's within a foot of the pavement right now, the erosion. That area, Dennis has gone to the state DEP to see if he could get permission to do a little more rock, just to protect that area. So far, he's been told no. You have to go through all the permitting processes, and they'll determine. There is a clause that allows you to do it in the case of emergency, but they don't think it's an emergency yet. Dennis is trying to find someone from the state to come look at that portion, so I know I've had an email from a resident that was worried, what are you gonna do if it's an emergency? There is something in the law that allows you to do an emergency fix, but we still gotta run it by the state and get their permission. So that area, we're trying to get some permission for that limited to do something with rock, for the short term at least. But we can't do it until we get permission, because then we get our, we don't wanna get fined and everything else.
Yeah.
We're also, even from this, which is why we wanted to be here tonight and why we're not coming up with a solution without input, is we're actually hearing different opinions. You know, it may be some people are saying, we're not so concerned about because it's an island, if I'm hearing what I'm hearing tonight. Some people are saying, maybe we're okay with not having access for a few hours at a high tide rather than making a dam. Probably everyone would agree that something needs to be done in that area where it's coming close to getting to the road. But others may say, yeah, I don't think I want the road for the reasons you said, widen throughout, because it's gonna affect my well and things like that. And to be fair to all the taxpayers in town too, we're not looking to make a boulevard down there. We're just looking to try to preserve access for ambulances, you know, in case someone has a heart attack and needs to get someone there, and access so you guys can get in and out of your house. But yeah, maybe the engineers are gonna say that we can't raise the road enough that we can. As Peter said, it's been improved a lot by just doing better water flow. Maybe that's what the answer is, rather than raising the road. So we're not coming to give you our solutions, because we're not the professionals. But our best chance of having the least impact to the town as far as tax payments for everyone is to try to find the grant funding. And one of the ways to do the grant funding is to do what we're doing, getting all your public engagement, getting your suggestions, finding out what you use the road for. Because for instance, and Adi may talk more about this, depending on the purposes the road's used for, if it's just residences, maybe you're eligible for certain things. If, for instance, there's more public use further down the road, or there's businesses, there may be other grant opportunities. Am I right about that, Edie?
Yeah, the grant opportunities are really specific, based on what's out there right now. So there's grant opportunities. So getting funding for local, especially dead end roads is really, really challenging. Most of the funding for roads really focuses on, state maintained roads. And so there are some sort of tangential grants that are specifically focused on, maintaining access to, recreational opportunities. There are some that focus more on economic development, like, if the road has a significant, business population. So you'll see in the survey, we ask about if people have any home businesses, because that's something that could, we're not looking at building businesses on Pleasant Point Road, but we want to know what are the current uses of it, so that we can know what grant opportunities we could potentially go after to fund this project. And, I'll say that this project, this Pleasant Point Road project, you're not alone in what you're facing. We're seeing this across the state. And you're going to be on the cutting edge of dealing with this. And so this is a really cool opportunity, and this project could set an example for other towns and other communities. Maine specifically has really been affected by this, but, we want to make sure that we're doing this right. We're all kind of figuring this out together. We want to make sure that all of your interests are represented and that your concerns are heard. We definitely don't want you to not have access to your property or have your well be affected. And I understand your concern with that, because I know a lot of times big projects can feel that, you're not being heard, or that your property might be sacrificed for the benefit of the rest of the community. But I will say, I think we're looking for solutions that have the least man-made impact as possible. Anywhere we could minimize that, I think if we can avoid raising the road as a whole, that would be great. I don't think anyone really wants to raise the road. It's very costly. There's the potential that there would need to be some better crossing around that portion that's flooding quite a bit. But in terms of the rest of the road, the focus would really be on the undermining that's happening from the wave action and the tidal action.
There are a lot of, I know I'm a seasonal resident there, but there are a lot of full-time people that live there. And they need that access, they need that road, and I can see that something needs to be done. And I hate to be a NIMBY, but in my intersection of the road, I haven't seen that problem like they're getting at the first part of the road. And I think it's only right that the town does provide the citizens there access year-round, not just seasonal.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we're not looking to have the same solution for the entire portion of the road. That's why we're doing this engineering study, and why we really need to know, like, we need to take a look at the whole road, but we're going to address the road in portions. The undermining isn't happening along the entire portion of the road, so where we don't need to touch it, we don't want to touch it. We're not trying to go in there. And
I just want to reiterate one of your questions, and this isn't the town coming forward to make this a 24-foot wide 2-lane highway with curbing it. That's not what this is about. This is about trying to maintain what's there and protect it from the erosion. That's what our purpose is. We're not here to try to propose a bigger road,
It
thicker
should maintain
pavement,
as a
wider.
country road.
All we're trying to do is just maintain what's down there in the most economical and ecological way. So the environmental folks will.
And another thing, it is a dead end.
Yeah.
So it's, doesn't need all of a 2-lane highway down through there.
But we've got to realize that we've got, police, fire, school buses. We've got a public way there that we want to maintain for the public.
Colleen Moore, full-time resident down there. Just for the record, my concern is just that there is a road that we can get by on. I don't want to be driving along one day or walking along and have the thing collapse underneath me. That's all I care. If I have to wait sometimes during a storm for the water level to go down before I can cross, it's fine. I can live with that. That's the price we pay for living on the bay. As long as there's a road, I'd be happy with just that there's a road that is available 99.9% of the time that I live there. But as far as some of the other concerns that I have, I did not know that the salt on the road was reduced. And I think it's great that it was. I wish though that there was no salt. I can't believe that in this country, when we are trying to fight an environmental catastrophe, that we are still salting roads. It's going right into the bay, and that cannot have anything except the bad effect on the fact that that water near the bay cannot freeze. If it could freeze for much of the cold weather season, we wouldn't have the water sloshing against the banks during those cold weather seasons as much. I mean, I know it's getting warmer and warmer as the years go by, but we're not helping it by dumping salt into the bay. That was one concern. Another concern is, especially down on that sharp curve where the flooding often occurs, is there's like an infestation of brown-tailed moth down there, which after moths attack a tree, I believe it's for 3 seasons in a row, it kills the trees. So it is cost prohibitive for individuals to treat hardwood trees for those brown-tailed moths. And unless the town can pitch in and stop this brown-tailed moth somehow through a grant or something, I don't know. But it can be a bad situation down there sometimes with the brown-tailed moth. The other things I wanted to mention was I love the nature-based solutions thing. As far as where the damage is really severe already, I'm not sure we have time to plant things. It's gonna probably have to be hardscape in those areas where it's severely damaged already. I'm all for doing the vegetation thing and all the other places where we can try to prevent it. You know, we'd have to get going on it soon. I will, however, say that I don't think we should ever plant pines, because when they go, they take the bank right with them. And their root base is shallow to begin with. The oaks do nothing but attract the brown-tailed moths. Black locust, there's a lot of it down there, but it's an invasive species. And we have to also kill the Asian bittersweet that's growing down there. That kills the good trees that are, you know, trying to help our ground, and any other invasive species that are down there. They need to go. We need to get on it with this invasive species thing. That being said, I was wondering if anybody had any recommendations as to what some of us landowners who have the water side can do now. Is there something that we can plant? Is there something that we can do with our property to help? Well, I mean, I'm open to suggestions, and I know that there are some shrubs and trees that are recommended for bank protection. So I could do some of the things that I would know, but I don't know if anyone else has any ideas that we could implement now to help the situation. Thank you.
I guess I can speak to that. So I don't think we can specifically provide any sort of recommendations for what you should do now, but what I would recommend is that your county soil and water conservation district often has resources or even workshops that would address some of those topics. I'm not sure how often they do I can't remember what they call it, but planting or vegetation workshops, but it's possible that if you wrote to them and asked specifically to hold that sort of workshop, maybe even if you want to do that as a community.
Actually, I think that's something we can take on as the town.
Okay.
We'll reach out to them and
Yeah.
get some suggestions and maybe see if they're willing to do a presentation or something. If nothing else, we can get stuff in front of the website, so we'll do that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Andrea and Maria at 110 Pleasant Point, which was one of the images of the erosion in front of our house. The great part about the lady who, well, prior to meeting Mary, about the lady that lived there, she had left some of her photos and stuff with the family, so where that side of the land is, there's never been any trees there. We have pictures dating back to 1980, that there's never been tall trees there.
Do the pictures show the erosion progressing?
I don't have water side, I just have like looking out from the camp. So a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. I heard a lot about you wanting to reduce the cost to taxpayers, and I totally understand that, given the economy we're in. However, I just would love to point out that Pleasant Point Road pays an astronomical amount in taxes down there. We own another home over in Pinewood Drive, which also has water access. The houses over there have natural gas access, they have town water, town sewer, and
Longer lots. Bigger.
bigger lots. And they can, like I said, access the water. And when I had called, when our taxes kept going up down there, I was told by the town that it was, well, because of your view, that's why your taxes didn't work. Well, I can still see the same river per se from our other location. And I got told, well, they look at, the bike path. Well, that's only when the trees aren't there, right? So my point is that on 0.19 acres, we're paying almost $4,000 in taxes. The homes over in Pinewood Drive that have an acre plus, their taxes are like $3,500. So there's a huge discrepancy in that. So when we want to talk about reducing the cost of taxpayers, I feel like we're already paying a boatload of tax money anyways to live down there, and we lose power all of the time. We had Baxter Woods. I totally respect Mr. McCarthy, with having access to walk out there. I think that is great. Going back to when they had done that work, you guys had just paved that road. They were supposed to take a logging truck a couple times a day. That was not a couple times a day. It was like 5, 6 times a day of huge, heavy trucks with huge logs on them. The road started to crack. The weight of those have got to be over 80,000 pounds. Yeah, maybe 80,000 pounds. Pretty significant. When I took that and did some research, basically a 5-axle tractor trailer loaded 80,000 pounds is the same impact on an interstate highway as 9,600 automobiles. So the weight of that on that road, especially where it is very narrow in front of our place and other areas on the bend, not Mr. McCarthy's bend, but Robert's bend, that's a lot of weight in one spot. I don't know if they're coming back, but I know that that did cause damage. I don't know what it did to some of the soil on there. If they intend to come back, we have that to be concerned with again. It could have caused some crumbling underneath. When we moved in there about 5 years ago, all the work of people building up the embankment, my father-in-law, tried to tuck a lot of leaves in there. Well, I didn't know it was underneath it, so I, 5 years ago, was like, I don't want all these leaves here, I don't want brown tail, and I started to pull the leaves out, and that's when I started to notice that, oh my gosh, there's, like, it's really deep in there under this road. I stopped putting leaves under there and didn't want to fill it in because I wanted you guys to see what that looked like. And I know that the process of the rocks had started, but it had to start at this end before it could come to us. Unfortunately, it stopped when 5 years ago, I actually was concerned about in front of our house. That's where the emergency plan was in front of our location. I would like to see those rocks come. I walk the beach. I see that they're holding, they're strong, they're big. I think that's the best most efficient plan of action right now. Maybe thinking long-term, like you had talked about, of seeing of ways to prevent this from happening in other places. I think I can agree with that. But right now, we were the emergency spot in the very beginning, and we didn't have that happen. The other thing was that, leaves, and I think maybe that was all I had, but I would really like to see the rocks. I'm not concerned about the corner. I obviously know I don't agree with salt, but we do have a school bus coming down there. I've had to make calls before just to make sure that was salted, because I didn't want our school bus and our kids to hit a tree coming down if the water was there. But I do not care right now about the corner. I care about the fact that the erosion is so bad in front of our house and our neighbor's camp, that if a logging truck came down there, it is washed out all the way to the edge of the pavement, and underneath a heavy 80,000-pound logging truck, it is going to collapse that road in front of our home, and nobody is going to be able to access their homes beyond us. Thank you.
Darrell Nickerson, 184 Pleasant Point Road. I think the biggest thing we need to remember is the camp road. Back when I was a kid, if there were 2 cars that went by, a lot of traffic. And now, we're there trying to find all these solutions. It's a camp road. Some of us want to keep it a camp road. Not all of us want everything, but we need to figure out what we're going to do in the future. And we got to respect the town and what they do. So, as the culvert goes, maybe we do have to do something there, but it's a camp road. The experimental forest out back. It's like, let's be careful what we do. Let's respect what the town tells us we should do. So that's all I want to say. It's a camp road.
And then just to, I think, allay maybe fears, and we have absolutely no intent to make a boulevard there. You know, the only reason that we're looking this at all is to protect what's there.
Right,
So,
and that,
yeah, it's just
and
the
that's-
erosion issue.
And that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
If you really want to fix the problem, throw some money at it and put the road behind the houses. Put loam where the road is now, put the road behind the houses, I'm happy. I got no road between my property.
Hi, my name is Ruth Dodge. I'm at 149 Pleasant Point Road, and I am a seasonal resident, but like this fine woman here, I consider myself a lifelong resident. I am a Pleasant Point Bay user for generations, and so that I want to put that out there. I also want to echo what Harold just said. He's older than I am. He's been down there a little bit longer than I have. It is a camp road. It has become a boulevard since it was paved, and so I appreciate that, but I also appreciate running on that versus dirt. But part of me, from a speed perspective, would like it to be dirt again, because cars whip by my camp. I also want to reiterate what Colleen was just talking about. For me, my property is only on the water. I don't have a dual lot. And the trees are incredibly important to erosion. For me, I also see a hardscaping being a solution in the long run. Erosion down on the bay has been prevalent all the time just because of the nature of the road and where it is. Years and years ago, one of the solutions was to shore the bank with tires. So if we could move from tires to rocks to shore up the bank, I think that would be a great thing to do. I also would love it if the town would help with mitigating the brown tail. I have a lot of oaks around my property, and they did decimate several of them, and it is cost prohibitive, but that's what I'd like to do. But thank you for your work.
Anyone online want to comment? If so, raise your hand. We'll continue with the people in the room.
Thanks, Mark. Kevin Kern, 94 Pleasant Point Road. Thank you for holding this meeting. I appreciate a lot of thought went into it. I think it would have been great if we had it year or two ago, but now's the time, so I'm glad that you're also so open to the wisdom in the room, because obviously we have a lot of history and insight. People pay a lot of attention to, not just the road, but to the nature and water and plants, and a lot can be learned from just the folks in this room, so I appreciate that. A couple of quick points. I think your timeline is a little ambitious, given how nuanced this project is, how many unforeseen delays you're gonna encounter. And that makes me think that you ought to continue to think about multiple solutions for the length of the road. And some will be gray and some will be green, but the exigency of some of the circumstances may require that you can't build a marsh. You have to put some riprap in where the road's in danger of collapsing, and you should keep safety, I hope, in the forefront of your mind when you're considering how to do that so that no one gets hurt. Secondly, I hope you have some plan for how to coordinate with the various regulatory agencies who are not in the room and they see things differently than we do. And it would be a shame to get a long ways down that timeline and then some 800-pound gorilla steps on you and says, we don't do it that way. So coordination with them, I think, is important, and I'm sure we would love to know how that goes and what those communications are like and whether or not we can partake in that. Appreciate very much the funding point that's been prominent. It would be desirable, of course, and it would alleviate the tax burden perhaps, but I'm not hearing that is a predicate for this work to move forward. It's desirable, but not a sine qua non for doing what has to be done on the road. And fourth, but also that's clearly an opportunity for funding to come up with solutions that are progressive, that could show the state these things can happen. I would think that might open some doors for you as you're looking for opportunities to say, these are things we've always wanted to do, wanted to try. We have an opportunity to do them and do them the right way, and also do the right thing by the folks down on the point. And fourth, I think, as Joe and others pointed out, climate change is really the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Nobody wants a boulevard farm, so but we also are thinking about our kids and our grandkids. So it's not going to get easier in time, it's going to get harder. So solutions now that are economical, I think your lens for understanding what economical is not what's going to last for 5 years. It's what's going to last for 50. And again, that may tie into the grants and the funding and the solutions. But I am encouraged that you are keeping that as a part of the discussion, because I think really at the end of the day, that's going to be the mark of how well we all succeed together in this project. Oh, thank you.
To follow up on something you said, Kevin, as far as funding, we're going to try to find grants, but we also, this is in the town manager's plan for capital projects as well.
Yeah.
So this year, there's money in there for the engineering work. So that's to help pay for the RFP we'll put out. And then based on those results, as we fund the budget for next year, he's already planning to set aside some amount. He hasn't figured the exact amount yet, it'll be hundreds of thousands to go towards this. But like the Elm Street cover is what, 650,000 roughly?
Yeah.
And we get about half of that funded by the state, because we were able to, because Elm Street's alternate Route 24, we contacted someone at the state and they were like, yeah, we'll share the cost of that. So point taken that, hey, you do pay a lot of taxes, but to try to be stewards of everyone in town and try to protect your taxes there as well, or in Pinewood Drive, if we can find a way to get a job like the Elm Street culvert, half paid for by the state, it helps with your tax burden. So we try to do things as frugally as we can in Topsham to try to protect taxes. I wish they were lower, we all do. But we also prioritize things and try to do what's important. This is an important project. We want to protect the road. We don't want it to erode. So we're also planning to budget. But if we're going to try this and see if we can find a little help for our taxpayers, and if it doesn't work out, then we may phase things and just do it with our money. But we aren't just hoping for a grant. And if it doesn't happen, you're not going to get the road fixed. But we're trying to work a couple different angles at once to be as fiscally responsible as we can.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Me again. I have one comment about the oaks along the road. it is a big problem, because we live way down at the end of the road, and we have oaks all along the shoreline, and we have one right now that's totally dead, and it's major right in the, just on the edge of the bay with big root systems. And the minute that, now that the tree is dead, the root systems are gonna, over time, will just die and won't be holding the bank anymore. So it is a major problem, but the other major problem is the catch-22, is that the spray that people use to spray the browntail moth or the oak trees is very toxic to fish. And so the people I've dealt with, just on our own property, they can't spray along the edge of the bay where we are. We just have to watch the trees and just hope like hell that they, excuse my language, but they don't get too fat and beaten up by browntail. But we have quite a lot lost. There's nothing we can do about it. We've tried injecting the trees, we've tried doing, but anything we could do to try and save these great big tree jumps that have been there for years and years and years, holding the bank. But little by little, I look at the ones up by where Dennis Briggs lives, and that top of the road area there, it's really bad. So I don't know what the solution is, but the bay is very vulnerable. And so I don't know if you guys have any other idea, but anyway.
I had a couple of trees down the Forsyth Road that are about 300 feet from the water, and Tree couldn't use a spray for that reason. They had to inject them. So I think you're right. We probably couldn't spray the trees along the road.
And the injections don't always work, especially on old trees, because it doesn't get high enough into the branches. So it's a big problem.
I just had a clarification question.
Go for it.
Where does the Baxter Woods fall into any of this? Because they are a place that the public can go to walk in. It's on the map to go to. So are they included in any of this conversation as their, I use the word lightly, like a right of way to everything to get to them?
I'll answer that two ways, or one way, and then I'll let Edie jump in. But one of the things we're thinking of is there's no place to really park there to walk in Baxter Woods. So if that area towards the end of the road where the turnaround is, if we was able to create a few parking spaces and so it's better public use of the woods, if they want that. And that might help justify the road.
We're trying to keep it a camp road.
It's experimental for it. No.
There's already plenty of traffic down there without having more parking spaces down.
So my question goes around to, like, in the event the road is washing away, then is there the ability for them to grant or hand over some land if roadways needed to be altered to access their land to get to our land?
At this point, that's nothing that's been explored.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have reached out to the state to talk to them about the issue, and they are aware of it. They have asked to be included in these conversations. I think that they're not looking to do anything to the town forest or manage it in any sort of way beyond what they're doing with it right now. But I think that they will continue to be part of the conversation and, weigh in on the solution. But I think that they do want to work with the town on this. So I don't know if that's encouraging or not. But.
I get into it that I don't want to see picnic tables or porta potties. Okay?
I don't think you have to worry about that. There's no improvements that the state is looking to. They really just want it to be a forest, and they don't even want to put any sort of trails or anything at all. So that is their official stance.
One piece that is kind of important, that's more ammunition, the fact that the state forest is there and that there's public access to it on Pleasant Point Road, that there's state access to it on Pleasant Point Road. That is a piece of ammunition in crafting grant narratives, just like school population, if a school bus has to go down the road, that's a piece of ammunition. If there happen to be home businesses on the road, all of those support the idea that this is not just a dead end road, that there are, there are uses there, that are important uses.
I am going to speak to that, and I appreciate that there are public uses for it, and, actually, having been there, I don't spend a lot of time in the experimental forest in the Baxter Woods. However, there is, as Harold said, there is access on the Foreside Road. And again, I appreciate that you're saying that the state has involvement and there could be parking spaces in that, but again, I reiterate, it is a narrow dead end road. And so if we want to talk to the Baxter forest people, it would behoove us also to talk about access from the other side from a dual road throughway. Because there is a lot going down there. And again, I've already talked about the speed of the road, so.
Yeah, and something I'll add to that is that the Foreside Road portion is actually owned by a different state department. One is, what's that?
They could go coordinate.
Yeah.
Get together.
They should. So if that's something that, we need to discuss with them, I think, that's something that we can definitely do, but the Foreside Road is owned by Inland Fish and Wildlife, and the Pleasant Point roadside, I'm blanking, I think it's Bureau of Public Land, or.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Is it owned by?
Public land.
Well, I've got a question for Dennis. At this point, I mean, we kind of hashed it out. We realized we do need some improvements. The road's getting busier than it used to be, blah, blah, blah. And I go plow snow 2 o'clock in the morning. Road's always plowed. I appreciate that. So where are we going next? We've kind of sat here and discussed everything if there's a problem, but yeah,
Go ahead.
are we gonna like just like take every individual piece of property and say, geez, this is what we need to do here, or the whole road and this is what we're gonna do, or?
Well, first of all, we're trying to work through, we're gonna write an RFP, request for proposal from an engineering company that'll be able to identify some of those areas on the road. The permitting agencies, DEP, Army Corps, and Inland Fish and Wildlife want professional engineering stamps on proposals and things like that. So that's why we need to work with those people. We understand that there's not gonna be one solution. It's not gonna be driving pilings, 1,800 feet of piling down in the front of everybody's property on Pleasant Point to solve this erosion problem. That's not gonna be the right solution for everybody.
Right.
We asked about deeds and property lines and things like that, because moving forward, we need to know where the private property and where the town right of ways are for that road. That's one of the purposes we're here tonight, to ask help on that. Where are we at? We've got a couple areas of immediate concern that we're gonna come up with a solution for right on.
Right, which what we need to do is address the worst problems first, but like I own maybe 20 feet off from the road, I mean, and I do have an erosion problem. Will they go across that property to fix that if the road's not in danger, or are they gonna just be like, if the road's in danger, or?
What we envision happening is we'd like to come up with a plan for the length of the road, including property that may not be right on the side of the road right now, and work with the homeowners, work with the landowners there.
Yeah.
And see if they want to partake in it when we get in the neighborhood, when we get to your property. That's what we're envisioning, seeing what would happen there.
Right, I
That's what
can't
we'd like
imagine
to have.
anybody's gonna say, no, don't go across their property to fix the.
And if that happens, then we're gonna pull the reins back and not do that. We're not gonna go across it.
Right, well,
We've got folks that are driving this as a catalyst to get this work done, and we've got other folks that don't really want to have it so progressive. So that's a juggling act we're gonna have to work through.
yeah, so I guess in my mind, I'm just gonna just let the town decide what the best is for the property, and if they're gonna do something in front of my property, that's great. They come to me and say, hey, geez, this is what we're gonna do. It's like, okay, any questions, any answers, any whatever. It's like, I either have, a comment or not, but help yourself.
And we think that's great. Thank you. That's what we're hoping for, is to work with folks. We're not coming in to build a super highway. We kind of like, I'm trying to get the feeling like we're trying to come in here and put the mall road 4 lanes down through. No, that's not what we're here for. We just want to maintain the camp road scenario.
Right.
And that's all we're trying to do.
And I think that's what most of us want, is to kind of keep the camp, the camp feel of it's still there, and it's, we're a pretty tight knit group for the most part, and we all help each other out. And a lot of pine trees are falling, and we're kind of taking care of that as they come down, I guess. CMP's probably not all that happy every time, but.
We've had CMP down, try to help us get a few of those down after that one storm.
So now that we're on that, is where the power lines go up through the woods, that's always 100% of the time, that's where the problems are. When they do all this, is there any way we can talk to CMP and say, hey, look, we're doing all this reconfiguring of the road and fixing it, can we run the power lines so they can get their trucks to the power lines?
We can look into that. Again, today, we don't know where our right of ways are.
Yeah.
We don't.
You got a lot of homework to do.
Yes, we do. And that's why we gotta stop. We've gotta continue to improve the situation, but we've gone about as far as we can go until we really stop now and do some due diligence.
Right, and I think at this point, we need to just say, do what you gotta do as long as it takes, and thanks for trying.
In communications, Mark mentioned it, we're gonna probably have to start out with a survey. So there's gonna be fellows down there with vests on and survey tapes and rods and what's this guy doing? And phone calls are gonna be made. We're just trying to establish our boundary lines and know where everybody is type of deal.
Right.
We don't wanna do something to your property anymore than we want you to do to us.
And I want you to come down and make it better, just don't tax me on it.
And for clarification, for clarification, that one picture up there tonight where we showed some brush being cut or whatever, it wasn't meant to be negative towards that property owner. It was only meant to share that in the future, we're probably looking at plantings as a good option.
Right.
And we all want to be on the same page when we start doing plantings as an option. That's all. It wasn't that somebody isn't letting the plants grow. It's just trying to bring across. We're not looking at putting in steel. We're not looking at trying to put in concrete as the solution. We don't know what that solution is going to look like. But we all can kind of come to the agreement that some of this riprap we put down is work. Plantings around the riprap is filling in, great. The riprap was put down in 2017. Some of those pictures that you saw tonight that I've taken and sent on to DEP as of Monday and Tuesday of this week.
And all the problems we have with trees, one tree on Douglas Rock, it just won't give up. So we need a few of those, I guess, blown.
And we don't plan on taking the oak tree at the top of the hill either.
I don't know if it will help or not, but, excuse me, oops, before the state came in and took the trees out of Baxter Forest, there was a surveyor who, I don't know if he did the entire road, but he did a large chunk of it. They have to have those records. And I spoke to the person who was doing it, because I know him, and I was surprised to see him, but they did that survey. So that was what, 2017, because they took the trees in 2018, a couple months, like a month
Good
ago.
to know. Yeah, we'll try to pursue
Do
that.
you know which state department it was for?
I don't know, but I do know that the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife are the ones who manage or so-called maintain or in charge of that property. Okay, I stand corrected.
Bureau of Public Lands, when he went in for the cutting of that, had to survey private property as well as the Baxter property. And the Baxter property leaves all through there. You had on one map that showed the lots of the houses. They followed those out and put in stakes and went literally to the back door of many people, cutting. And then yarded it out into the yard. It happened down Joe's way and back to me. I'm in a butter, so I was notified, and I'm nosy, so I was in there a while. I like to see what's going on, and I think they did a marvelous job. But I also offer this in relationship to the trucks coming back and forth. The last time that was done was 30 years ago. I was younger then, but at that time, the cutting they did was not as extensive and whatnot, and I will leave it with this. It was a money loser for the state of Maine. They had to meet the mandate of John Baxter. They cut out all that lumber and they sold it, and they still lost money. It cost the state money to meet the mandate of John Baxter. So 30 years is not a long time, but the forester I spoke to said, don't look for me in 30 years. And the people that took the lumber out said, this will grow and whatnot, but I don't think we'll be back in 30 years. So in terms of trucks going back and forth over, I don't look for them. Hope I'm old enough to see them, but I'll leave it there.
Well, is there any other plans or ideas that you have to do, like, that we didn't know about, that came for the road? But then we find out that you're looking into making more parking spaces down there? Is there anything else additional that you're looking into?
No.
Because you are the one who brought up the parking spaces.
So I think I was the one that brought it up, but it was, I guess we call it brainstorming. So trying to think of ways to justify grants, and as was mentioned, public use can help justify a grant. So that's where it came from, but I would, trans, we certainly heard loud and clear that the people do not want that. So, but no, there's no other plans.
Yeah, because we're gonna sometimes throw things at you, but we're not gonna do anything without running it by you, so. That open communication is really important. If there's loud and clear, you guys don't want that, you know, I can see that it doesn't necessarily make sense. That's not what the road is built for. Still helps that, Baxter's, State Forest is there, and that the access point is on that road. But, you know, loud and clear, we don't want to encourage additional public access, and probably helps with the longevity of the road and whatever interventions we do and maintaining sorry, getting caught up in my words again. Maintaining whatever interventions are put in.
And that's the point of us coming to you guys, asking for public input now, instead of bringing a plan to you now, is we heard this loud and clear, so don't pursue it. Don't put parking spots at the end of the road. Was a brainstorming idea, but now we know it's not a popular idea. So if we can, and similarly, we want to incorporate when we're going out to RFP to engineers, we want to incorporate all your thoughts about what kinds of solutions might work where. We're going to be asking the engineers to give us their professional assessment of, does a nature-based solution work in this section, but it doesn't work in this section? Is riprap the only solution for one part of the road and nothing else really is going to work? That's the information that we're hoping to get from an engineering assessment, but we want to be able to incorporate all of this feedback into our RFP so they know what's a priority for Topsham.
Devin?
A small follow-up, Dennis, I think I misheard you. In response to Harold's question on what are we doing tomorrow going forward? I thought I heard you say we need to stop and do a due diligence lot by lot. That doesn't mean, does it, that you're gonna stop on the holistic end-to-end plan about what a fully integrated plan?
No.
They're gonna go side by side.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I just meant, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, no, we're not stopping, I just want to continue, but I want people to understand, it's the length of the project. We're not gonna paint it all the same colors. We're talking about riprap, but there's also, plastic textile type materials that can go in, like a honeycomb type material that we can plant inside that honeycomb, and that'll create green growth as well, things like that may be a potential for solutions.
Last question, I promise, I have to get one of my kids, but
You wanted the parking?
no, I do not want it. It's already tight enough, which is why when in front of our house, when cars come in, when I watch a car move over to the edge, I wait and cringe thinking that it's just gonna drop on the whole side of the car. Anyhow, this may not even play a part in it, but what about the sandbars? We have I don't have as much experience as many others that have lived there for a long time, but the sandbars in the river have grown bigger. So where you used to be able to go, you can't anymore because they're larger.
They should definitely.
Right, they shift, but they're getting bigger. To my point, the water movement now might go and be diverted into other areas because it's starting to get bigger. Does that play a part in some of that is where I was trying to get at.
Yeah, we'll have, that's something that again, through,
Just to
through the
look at the
engineering,
river.
board, we'll be able to look at that.
Okay.
Exactly. No, good point, Andrea, thank you.
Just before people, as people are starting to head out, I'm gonna share my screen so we can, so we have some surveys that we would like you to fill out. Those are gonna be really important. We also have an online version of the survey, so I'm gonna put a QR code on the screen. Let's get a little fancy here, but, this will be really important for our records and incorporating what you're saying into the RFP and into the project design, and also for funding opportunities. So if you could please take the time to fill it out. If you want it to be anonymous, you just don't put your name, don't put your address. If you don't care, then, as much as possible, it would help to have your address, and then if you're able to share any sort of property surveys or information that you have, if you could email them to probably Mark. That would be great, but continue to share.
And from the last comment about the sandbars, I mean, that's all because of erosion, because the whole river is, as the flow goes down through, it hits the side of the bank and it pulls down the sand and makes it there. And the other thing is about that I've noticed in the last few years is the tides are rising like a normal high tide now, probably 1.5 feet higher than it was probably 15 years ago. And that sand that is now being dumped into the bay is just a hard sand. We'll try to grow grass and sand, so that makes the current flow much faster, and the wind and everything, nothing to slow it down. And I'm not an engineer, but I feel like that's probably part of why we're getting such a big amount of erosion, because nothing is to slow the current down or the down. The grass, the wild rice, everything else has been choked out by the sand, and so I think we're looking at a lot of factors here.
One more comment, please. Just remember that the things that you do down at the beginning of the road on the embankment, it's going to affect everybody on the road. It's a nature thing, so I'm sure the engineers are supposed to know this stuff, so they have to keep that in mind. We are on the bay side, so whatever you do down there is going to affect us. Thank you.
We'll also put this link on the website, so if, as Peter was jumping up, scanning it, feel free to do that. We'll put it on the website too. You've got paper copies. We'd love to have your input. I want to commend you all for coming tonight. I haven't seen a town meeting with this. You actually have almost as many people tonight as we had at our special town meeting on November 2nd. So we really appreciate you guys all taking the time to come. I know it's the holiday season. You've got other things to do, but thank you very much for coming. Thank you for the input you've given tonight, and thank you for the input that we'll get on your surveys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, thank you. You got my number? Yes.
We may get one.
Yeah, very good. All right. You're welcome. Yeah. I certainly do.
Good job.
Who are you?
Yeah, that's gonna be fun. There's a lot out there, just specifically for islands.
We've got one spot, and I was really shocked that she responded the way she did. Try to take some different picture angles and maybe write her down.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know if you can speak for us on. Oh, not that. For engineer, who was that? I don't know.
Right.
He said, "Ah, don't worry about it. Just wait till the road caves in, it's just gonna fix it."
Maybe
React.
solution.
Yeah.
So it's just an offer.
Right.
Remind you.
Right.
Yeah, we'll definitely look into it.
Thank you, Bruce, well.
Insurance. Home insurance. A few years back, even, it just seemed to designate the.
Where do we leave?
We leave. You were fast.
Well, have a pen.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Right.
So,
It's
and the lady.
Yeah, cause it was, I couldn't even.
A selection already where.
That's why I lived on, he worked really hard to get that. I lived on like Sand Bridge, it's really 5 years. I lived on Secret. Yeah. I lived up. That's the art. Right, they can come to that wall.
I think that maybe in
Every bit of ammo, unfortunately, probably because we scored. That's kind of hard in operational planning.
That's where I.
Right.
Options.
There's volunteer.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, I mean, it's always possible that there's.
They're all licensed.
Maybe should be established or something like that. I really can't comment on that. In terms of what the town plans for that. Maybe we need to consult that. Some hires.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
You know, I think public feedback is such a critical part of projects like these, so.